Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Thanks for joining me. My name is Nanda-nandana, and I'm going to be doing an in-depth study of the Siksastaka prayers by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Where it's going to be a series of classes. So today we're going to be going through verses 1 through 3 of these prayers. Sometimes referred to as prayers, sometimes referred to as verses or texts. They're verses spoken in a very poetic way. So we can call them any of those things and it would still be accurate. So today just verses 1 through 3. There's a lot of nectar nuggets in these verses. These are prayers spoken by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his most confidential servants. And these prayers are an expression of Lord Chaitanya's feelings toward Krishna, his feelings toward the holy name, and the humility he feels when he's expressing these prayers. So you'll see as we unpack these prayers, they're really full of a lot of beautiful poetry, but at the same time, such important practical instructions for us in order to make advancement in our spiritual lives. So I see this as some of the instructions that Lord Chaitanya gives, I see as contributing towards that portion of our spiritual life where we can either move forward or stay stagnant. And the instructions that Lord Chaitanya gives to us, if we follow them, we can continue to move forward in our spiritual lives. And so I'll go into that more as we go through these prayers. In the description of each video, I'll be including my email address, and you are welcome to contact me if you have any questions, any realizations. If you'd like to have a discussion about these prayers, please feel free to reach out to me. Okay, so let's dive right into these prayers. Okay, so Siksastaka is composed of two words in Sanskrit. Shiksha meaning instruction, like you have a Shiksha guru that it gives you guidance and instruction. And then Ashtaka, which means 8 or a set of 8. So again, these are instructions, they're prayers, they're verses, whichever word you want to use to describe them, it kind of is all inclusive. They are prayers, they are instructions, and they are presented as verses. In fact, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Siksastaka is found in the last chapter of the Anchalila, which is the last volume of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And so the verses that I'm going to be showing you today and throughout these classes, this series of classes, I'm taking them from Prabhupada's translation in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So they may look a little different to you compared to what we normally see in the songbook. So just bear that in mind as we're going through this. Okay, so we have Siksastaka, we have the definition. And then we're going to be, as I said before, we're going to be doing verses 1 through 3 in this class. And we're going to be covering 4 main topics as we go over these verses. So the first topic is going to be the cumulative steps that take us from Sraddha to Prema. And some of you may already be familiar with this, some of you may not. I'm going to just go over them briefly to show you how they're connected with the verses of the Siksastaka. And then 2, why we should have a taste for chanting. And this often gets spoken about within ISKCON, but the one topic that I want to cover today that I think doesn't get covered quite enough in ISKCON or doesn't get spoken about quite enough is how we can get a taste for chanting, right? We always hear all the glories of the holy name, which is great. We want to hear those glories. We want to know what we should be grateful for. But then the question is if we don't have a taste, how can we get a taste? And then 4, how to become fixed in devotion to Krishna. So these are the 4 main topics we're going to cover today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the Sanskrit and the English for the first 3 verses. You're welcome to chant them along with me. We're trying to invoke Lord Chaitanya's mercy. And it's always nice to hear these Sanskrit words, and it's a nice way to get to know the verses if you'd like to memorize them. And feel free to mute me when you're singing along if you want to. We can sing along together, or you can mute me. I do not have the best singing voice. I'm just, it's not one of my strengths. So I'm going to say it anyways because, and same goes for you. If you don't have the best singing voice, it doesn't matter. Just chant the verses anyways, because Krishna is actually known as Bhava Grahi Janardana. And what that means is Krishna understands your intention. He understands the essence of your mood. Prabhupada says that in a class he gives on the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada says the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Bhava Grahi Janardana because he takes only the essence of a devotee's attitude. If a devotee sincerely surrenders, the Lord as the supersoul in everyone's heart immediately understands this. So basically, Krishna's not concerned with us doing things perfectly. He's concerned with us doing things sincerely. So if there's a sincere surrender, if there's a sincere attempt to chant these verses, that's what pleases Krishna, not the perfection of it. It's not to have a perfectly melodious voice, which, thank God for me, that's not the case. That's not required. This is not karma kanda, so we don't have to pronounce everything perfectly. We don't have to sing everything perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and read these. Again, you're welcome to read with me, chant with me, mute me, and chant these verses, and then we'll move on to start unpacking them. So verse 1. Cheto darpana marjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitadanam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Pratipadam Purnamritashvadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Padam Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. Let there be all victory for the chanting of the holy name of Lord Krishna, which can cleanse the mirror of the heart and stop the miseries of the blazing fire of material existence. That chanting is the waxing moon that spreads the white lotus of good fortune for all living entities. It is the life and soul of all education. The chanting of the holy name of Krishna expands the blissful ocean of transcendental life. It gives a cooling effect to everyone and enables one to taste full nectar at every step. And then verse 2, Nam Namakadi Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis Chatarpita Niyamita Smadanena Kalaha Etadrishi Tava Kripa Bhagavan Mamapi Dordaiva Midrisham Miha Janina Nuraga. My Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, in your holy name there is all good fortune for the living entity, and therefore you have many names, such as Krishna and Govinda, by which you expand yourself. You have invested all your potencies in those names, and there are no hard and fast rules for remembering them. My dear Lord, although you bestow such mercy upon the fallen conditioned souls by liberally teaching them your holy names, I am so unfortunate that I commit offenses while chanting the holy name, and therefore I do not achieve attachment for chanting. And then verse 3, this is the famous one. A lot of us know this. It's a shorter one. It's easier to remember, and we say it often, and is often quoted. Trinadapi sunichena tadoriva sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. One who thinks himself lower than the grass, who is more tolerant than a tree, and who does not expect personal honor, but is always prepared to give all respect to others, can very easily always chant the holy name of the Lord. So it's nice to try to learn these verses. Reciting them every morning before you chant your rounds is a helpful way to do so, and to remind us of the glories of the holy name before we chant, and the type of attitude we should have when we approach our japa for the day. Okay, so let's go to topic 1, the cumulative steps that take us from Sraddha to Prema. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Sri Bhajana Rahasya, he says that each each of the Siksastaka prayers exemplifies one of these steps, or krama. Krama means step. For example, Krishna is called Trivikrama, which is a name for Vamana Dev. So Vamana asked for those 3 steps from Bali Maharaj, and they were very large, very wide steps. So Trivikrama means 3 wide steps. So that's why Krishna is called that name. Tri is 3, and V means wide or set apart, and krama means step. So these steps, or these krama, they progress from Sraddha to Prema. Now, a lot of you may already know these steps, but there's something very interesting about one of these steps that, again, isn't really brought out when we talk about it, and we're going to go over that. So these verses explain those stages from Sraddha to Prema. So we're going to go through them one by one. So you can go into the CC and look up this verse and read through it and look at the Sanskrit, but we're going to also be going over it. Okay, so the 9 steps. So 1, adau Sraddha. First, there must be faith. Anything we do in life requires some sort of faith. So if we get on an airplane, we have faith that if they tell us the plane is going from, let's say, Boston to California, we have faith that it's actually going to end up in California, barring any unexpected events. But we believe the airlines when they say that they were planning to go to California. So everything we do, it requires some sort of faith. We can't even approach something without faith. Once we have that faith, then association with devotees, right? We meet the devotees and we like to be around them. We like to hear what they have to say about this philosophy. So tata sadhu sangha. So we have sangha, or association with the sadhus, the devotees. And then 3, atta bhajana kriya. Thereafter, performance of devotional service. Why I wrote cumulative steps is because faith is going to be there through all of these stages. Sadhu Sangha is going to be there through all of these stages. So it's cumulative. We start with this, then we go to this, then we go to this, but we keep the previous stage throughout the stages, the previous activity. So Bhajana Kriya, often at a certain point in Bhajana Kriya, usually includes getting initiated. So that devotional service, then, approaching a guru, getting initiated, and so on. Now, the next one's very interesting. Tata anartha nivritti syat. Syat means maybe. So it says then removal of unwanted bad habits, or removal of anarthas, or things without value, right? Because artha means value and anartha means without value. So our kind of conditioned bad habits are habits that actually move us away from Krishna rather than towards Krishna. So that may be there. So we're going to talk about that actually, because this is actually the tipping point in our spiritual life, right? Because faith, okay, if there's not faith, there's nothing. You're not even part of these steps. But then when there's some sort of faith, of course you're going to go and spend some time with the devotees, and of course you're going to want to be around them. You have some faith, so you want to hear what they have to say. And then Bhajana Kriya, we like the idea of devotional service. We may like to, because of that association with devotees, we want to stick around and do stuff with them, right? So we come and ask if there's any help we can offer, and the devotees engage us in service. But in Anartha Nivritti, this is a personal thing. This takes work. This actually takes a very decided effort to engage in the process that brings us through Anartha Nivritti. Now, and the reason why I say this is the tipping point is because we can actually get stuck at Bhajana Kriya. We can actually get stuck there. It's possible. We don't just automatically go through these stages, and that's built into the Sanskrit with this word syat. It's built in. This may be there. So if you hear that this may be there, you're going to want to find out what you need to do to make sure it is there. Because on the other end of Anartha Nivritti is tata nishta. One becomes steadily fixed up in firm faith. So you can see that that faith is still there, but it becomes firm. You become fixed in it. So we want to know, and this is what Prabhupada often refers to as fixed up in Krishna consciousness. This is what we want. It's very difficult to fall down from the stage of Nishta. It's possible. We have the story of Jata. He was at a much more advanced stage. When we get to the stage of Prema, there's no question of falling down. But all the way up until that point, there is a question. We can fall down. However, it's much more difficult once we get to the other side of Anarthana vritti, because clearing away unwanted bad habits means clearing away the things that keep us from just turning fully towards Krishna. So once you fully turn towards Krishna, you don't want anything other than that. There is nothing better. Everything else just seems unappealing at that point. Unless in the case of Jata, what Prabhupada said was that he had stopped performing his devotional activities because of the deer that he got attachment to. So it's possible. So we still have to take care, but getting to this point is gonna get us more fixed in our faith. Then after that, there's ruchi tata, taste for spiritual activities. And this means also a loss of taste for material activities thereafter. Tata is thereafter. Okay, and then atta asakti, then addiction to Krishna. You can't get enough of Krishna at this point. I'm not going to go too in depth into the 9 steps, just to kind of go over them briefly, after Anarthana vritti, because we're going to be, the verses we're doing today are connected up to Anarthana vritti and Nishta. So then after this, just kind of show you briefly what the stages are. And probably we'll do another class just based on these steps, because Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives a whole explanation of these steps in his Madhurya Kadambini. So that would be a good, another discussion to have. Okay, Tata Bhava, then love develops. So that's when there's a softening of the heart. And then 9, Tata Prema, Vipralamba and Sambhoga. So we have love in union and love in separation. So thereafter, pure love for Krishna arises. Okay, so let's go over the verses that exemplify the 9 cumulative steps. Verse 1 is Sraddha, or faith. The first verse of Siksastaka that exemplifies faith. Verse 2 of the Siksastaka exemplifies sadhu sangha, association with devotees, bhajana kriya, performance of devotional service, and anarthana vritti, possible removal of unwanted bad habits. Verse 3 exemplifies nishta, or steadiness, or being fixed up in your devotional service. Verse 4 exemplifies ruchi, or a taste for spiritual activities and loss of taste for material activities. Verse 5 exemplifies asakti, or addiction to Krishna. Verse 6 of the Siksastaka exemplifies bhava, where love develops and there's a softening of the heart. Verse 7 exemplifies vipralamba prema, or pure love and separation. And verse 8 exemplifies sambhoga prema, or pure love and union, which includes also separation. So these are according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Okay, so those were the 9 cumulative steps and how they connect with the verses. And now topic 2 is why we should have a taste for chanting. So that goes back to verse 1. Topic 2 goes back to verse 1. So verse 1 exemplifies Sraddha. And you'll find this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Anchulila, chapter 20, text 12. Right? So let there be victory for the chanting of the holy name, which can cleanse the mirror of the heart, stop the miseries of the blazing fire of material existence. It's the waxing moon that spreads the white lotus of good fortune for all living entities. It is the life and soul of all education. The chanting of the holy name of Krishna expands the blissful ocean of transcendental life, and it gives a cooling effect to everyone and enables one to taste full nectar at every step. So The reason why this is Sraddha is because this is introducing the glories of chanting Krishna's holy names. It's introducing the glory of Krishna, what his holy name represents, what it actually is, what Sankirtanam is. So first thing is, the Sanskrit literally says that Sankirtanam conquers, or that it's victorious. And then it goes, so it's telling you that Sankirtanam conquers and that there are 7 benefits from Sankirtanam. So this is why it's connected with faith. It's telling you, take a look at this, what you're about to consider, take into consideration, take a look at this, look at how great this is. This is Krishna, this is his holy name, this is what his holy name gives to you. This is what it represents. This is what it actually is. So for something to be victorious, for something to give you so many benefits, that can pique your interest, that can give you a bit of faith. So this first verse is creating faith, that you might want to give this a try, actually. You've got nothing to lose. If you try chanting Hare Krishna, you could get these benefits. If you try it and you don't like it, okay. You may not cultivate that faith, or you may not feel that faith, but give it a try. Most likely you will. Most likely it will give you some faith. But it has to be done properly. So let's talk about that. So Sankirtanam is composed of 2 parts. One is Sam and the other is Kirtana. So Sam means together. So for example, Sadhu Sangha, when we're doing everything. So we often think of Harinam Sankirtan, right, as going out together and chanting the holy name with others out in the streets, and with other Vaishnavas, of course. It can also mean complete, perfect, intense, or thorough. So it might be the perfection of your chanting your Japa, the perfection of chanting Shastra, chanting the Bhagavatam, right, when it's properly heard and chanted. So that's Sankirtanam. And then Kirtan, of course, is chanting. So this is a perfect or intense chanting, or a chanting together with other Vaishnavas and other people. People who don't know they're Vaishnavas yet. Okay, so the 7 benefits we got from verse 1, right? So when the way this verse is constructed, Sankirtanam, let's go back. I want to go back to actually the Sanskrit. You see all of these words ending in anam. They are referring to Sankirtanam. So Sankirtanam is the subject of the sentence. So what it's really saying is Sankirtanam is Cheto Darpana Marjanam. It is the cleansing of the heart. Sankirtanam is Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. It is the extinguishing of the blazing forest fire of material existence, and so on. So all of these, Vitaranam, Jivanam, Vardhanam, all these phrases ending in anam refer back to Sankirtanam, saying what Sankirtanam is. So Sankirtanam is victorious. It is the cleansing of the heart, and so on. So when we go over these 7 benefits, keep that in mind, why I wrote it this way. It is the cleansing of the mirror of the heart. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. It is the extinguishing of the sufferings of the blazing fire of material existence. Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. So at this point, your material life is finished, your spiritual life begins, and then it begins with this opening of the white lotus, which is the next one. The next benefit, it is the increasing moon who emanates the white lotus of happiness for all living entities. Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitadanam. So the white lotus of ultimate good fortune blooms at night under the rays of the Sankirtana moon and spreads a beautiful fragrance throughout the forest. So there's so many poetic, amazing, practical, blissful things that come from chanting, that come from Sankirtanam. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that one loses one's taste for material benedictions as a result of the spreading of the white lotus. So we can see a material benediction is more of a curse, actually, because everything that comes your way materially if it's not used in Krishna's service, that can actually be a curse because it brings you further away from Krishna. So it's not actually a benediction. Spiritual benedictions are real benedictions for the soul. Okay, so this is interesting. 4, it is the life and soul of all education, vidya vadu jivanam. So it's a life of knowledge. So this, once I heard Sri Chaitanya Maharaj explain this, this concept of vidya vadu jivanam. I heard him explain it in a class, so I'm including it here. It's very interesting. He said that vadu means bride. Lord Chaitanya talks about knowledge, vidya, as vadu, a bride. Women should be protected because they are valuable. This is compared to knowledge. Our knowledge is our treasure which has to be protected against ignorance. Ignorance is a dynamic force in the universe, unleashed by Krishna himself. Ignorance is competing and aggressive, and it's trying to cover our knowledge. Knowledge is something which has to be enlivened, which has to be nurtured and cared for, the way a woman or a bride is. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya uses this imagery. Knowledge is something which has to be nurtured. We have to protect it. We have to take care of it. So Lord Chaitanya's reference to Vidyavadu Jivanam is very similar to what we find in the Puranjana story. So the Puranjana story is an allegory, actually. If you haven't read that story yet, it's a very amazing story. Narada Muni is coming to teach lessons to a king through an allegory, but the king is really the subject of the allegory. So the king realizes, Puranjana, he realizes that he has neglected his wife or his knowledge, and now he has to bring it back to life. So that's the allegory that's being used there. So allegory, it doesn't mean that something's not true. It just means that you're giving basically like almost like an analogy, that this represents this, but it's still true that your knowledge has to be brought back to life. That's still the case. It's just that it's doing it through a story, showing that the wife represents the knowledge. I think in that story, Puranjana had gone hunting a lot, and his wife was at home depressed, and he came back to start paying attention to her and not neglect her anymore, and that represented his knowledge, which he had been neglecting. Okay, so 5, it is the increasing of the blissful ocean of transcendental life, Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, although the jiva is tiny, his bliss is not. Right? We're a little particle. We're a little particle of dust at Krishna's lotus feet. 1/10,000th the size of the tip of a hair. And then Srila Prabhupada says, the material ocean stays the same, but the ocean of transcendental bliss is always increasing and expanding. So no matter how much it expands, it can always expand more. That bliss always increases. And then 6, it is the taste of supreme nectar at every step. Pratipadam purnam ritaspadanam. And 7, it is the bathing of the soul that has a cooling effect for everyone. Sarvatma snapanam. So Atma Snapanam means a completely purifying bath of the soul. It's very poetic. It's very beautiful. Okay, so those are the 7 benefits, or the 7 things that Sankirtanam is, this victorious Sankirtanam. It's these things. Okay, so 3. Okay, so we've talked about why we should have a taste for chanting, or why we should chant. These are all these benefits that come from chanting, and it's victorious. So that's why we can chant. So what's the problem? Why do we still not have a taste? That's the question for those of us who don't. It's very difficult in ISKCON to admit out loud that we may not have a taste for chanting, because we always say chant and be happy, and of course it's the crux of our spiritual practice. And so to say that this victorious, blissful chanting of Krishna's holy name, I'm not really, I don't really have a taste for it. It's not really doing anything for me. No one wants to say that out loud. And that might be the case to different extents, right? You may have a little bit of taste, or you may have no taste. You're doing it out of duty. And of course, you don't want to tell anybody, yeah, I love chanting, it's great. Chant my rounds every day very easily. And in the meantime, you may have a lot of struggle with chanting your rounds. You may feel like, I'm hearing all these benefits, I'm hearing all these things, I'm hearing about how we lose our material desires, and it's not happening for me. And so we can get stuck on that part in our consciousness where we say, I know why I should like it, and everyone keeps telling me why I should like it, so let me just force myself. Yes, I like it. Because I should be grateful. I know why I should like this. But I don't think we talk enough about how we can like it. So let's get into that. Okay, so verse 2 is going to talk about this. Verse 2 is Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, and Anarthana Vritti. So clearing of anarthas while practicing Krishna consciousness in the association of devotees. This is CC Anchya 2016. So you'll notice in the CC that it doesn't go consecutively. It's not like verses 14 through whatever. I can't remember where it starts, but because there's verses in between, right? Lord Chaitanya speaks his verse in Sanskrit, and then there's Bengali in between the verses of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami talking about the emotions that Lord Chaitanya is going through. And that main emotion that he goes through is humility, constantly getting more and more humble with each verse. So this is Lord Chaitanya saying, in your holy name, there's all good fortune to the living entity. So we're continuing these glories of the holy name. But then towards the end, Lord Chaitanya says something very interesting. You have many names, such as Krishna and Govinda. You've invested all your potencies into those names, and there's no hard and fast rules for remembering them. It's not like Karma Kanda. You don't have to pronounce it perfectly. You don't have to say it at a certain time of the day. So there's no hard and fast rules. We're still kind of like on the why we should love this. But then he says, my dear Lord, although you bestow such mercy upon the fallen conditioned souls, by liberally teaching your holy names, I am so unfortunate that I commit offenses while chanting the holy name, and therefore I do not achieve attachment for chanting. So we have a little bit more of the why, and now we have that expression of humility. Now one can say, of course, Lord Chaitanya is God. Of course he has a taste. Of course he doesn't commit offenses. But he comes as a devotee to teach by example. So he's telling us that it's actually okay. It's okay to say, I don't have a taste. I'm very unfortunate. I don't have attachment for chanting. I don't have a taste. I do what's called sometimes courtesy rounds. I do it because I'm supposed to. I do it out of duty. And when I'm chanting my rounds, sometimes I'm just looking at the clock to see how soon before I'm done so that I can get on to the real activities in my day. And of course, we don't always directly think this way. We don't say like, okay, I got to get on to the real stuff. But subconsciously, we may feel that way. There's these other things I want to do, and the only thing standing between me and those things is this chanting that I told my guru that I would do. This chanting that I do to keep from being kicked out of the temple, or this chanting I do to maintain my vow, whatever the case may be. So Lord Chaitanya is showing by example here that it's okay if you don't have a taste, if you can admit if you don't have a taste, if it does feel like a burden, then you want to admit so you can troubleshoot. Okay, so this is my question. What's step 0 in a recovery program? What do you need to do before you even approach those 12 steps in a recovery program? What do you need to do? Because it's very similar to the stages from Sraddha to Prema. How do you get that faith that this could actually work for you? You first have to admit the need for help, right? If you pretend you don't need help, you can't get help. If you pretend there's nothing wrong, you can't fix anything because there's nothing to fix. There's nothing wrong. I love chanting. I just easily chant all my rounds. It's no problem. The time goes by super fast. And meanwhile, that may not be the case. You may just feel guilty. You may feel like you can't admit it to the devotees. They may judge you. They may think you're not worthy. Are you thinking that they may think that? Most likely they don't. And if someone does think that, they're probably not the person to go to for a mentorship or to reveal your mind to. We have to be careful who we reveal our mind to. The people that we reveal our mind to should be people who have our best interests in mind and are mature in their own practice of Krishna consciousness so that they actually understand what we need and what can help us, rather than just judging us. Judging really doesn't benefit anybody. It doesn't benefit the person being judged, and it doesn't benefit the person judging. So best is someone comes to you with a problem, or you go to someone with a problem, and you both work together to see how you can fix it. That's the most practical, effective, rational way to do things, and the most beneficial. So we need to admit it first. So this is Lord Chaitanya showing by example how to admit that there's a problem here. And what's the problem? He says, I'm so unfortunate that I commit offenses. Therefore, I don't achieve attachment for chanting. So the word for unfortunate or misfortune is durdaivam. So according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, this is synonymous with anarthas, or all kinds of offenses. And then according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, this is due to nam aparad, offensive chanting. So if we don't have attachment because of offenses, we should take remedial action, so there may be anartha nivritti. So this is why it says there might be anartha nivritti, because first we have to see if we don't have a taste for chanting, we have to figure out why so we can move beyond that. Because one can stay stuck at this stage for the rest of their life, for many lifetimes. There's a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bahu Janma Kariyari Shravana Kirtana Tabutana Paya Krishna Pari Prema Dana. If one is infested with the 10 offenses in the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, despite his endeavor to chant the holy names for many births, he will not get love of Godhead, which is the ultimate goal of this chanting. So one can go on for many births doing this. So having this information, having this knowledge, we can make advancement in our spiritual life starting today. You can start right now. Even if you chanted all of your rounds, today you can chant an extra round and just start that chanting in a way that brings you to an anartha nivritti, and we're going to talk about how to do that. So it starts with this step 0, admitting that you have a problem, if you do have one. Okay, so there's 3 stages or 3 types of chanting. I would say one of them is a type of chanting and 2 of them are stages, actually. So namaparad is offensive chanting. Namabhasa is what Prabhupada calls almost pure chanting. Srudhanam is pure chanting. So you can actually skip namaparad. That's not necessarily a stage you have to go through. You can go straight to namabhasa. Then from there it's a stage, because you're going through anartha nivritti at the namabhasa stage. Once you get through that, then you go on to the Shuddhanam stage of pure chanting. So namaparad means you don't attempt at all to avoid offenses. And it's always a good idea to recite the 10 offenses before you start chanting your rounds for the day, so we know what to avoid. So due to pramada or inattentiveness, the other anarthas are difficult to deal with. So we're going to focus on this because Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that the other offenses are very difficult to deal with if we are committing this offense of inattentive chanting or not trying to chant attentively. Then all the other offenses become very difficult. So you can work on the other offenses, but if you're not trying to chant attentively, the other ones are going to be very difficult. You're not going to get too far. So let's talk about this inattentiveness, this inattentive chanting, or pramada means inattentive. So there's 3 types. One is sleep, one is distraction, and one is lack of intensity or lack of interest or apathy. So if we're distracted in these different ways, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that chanting is just simply like letters of the alphabet. So the level of revelation at this stage is that the holy name remains hidden, Krishna remains hidden. So so just to go over these 3 types of pramada quickly. Sleep. We often talk about getting up early in the Hare Krishna movement, right? We always say we should get up early. I think what we really should be saying is we should go to bed early. Getting up early is a no-brainer if you go to bed early. And getting up early when you've gone to bed late defeats the purpose. The purpose is to be awake for your japa, right? It's to be awake for the morning program, of course. We don't want to just be there physically in the morning program. We want to be there emotionally, mentally also. We want our intelligence to be sharp. So good sleep gives us sharp intelligence, right? They're connected. You notice when you don't have enough sleep, it's very hard to think about things rationally. We get irritable, we get more emotional, right? So that's connected with the mind. It's very emotional. The intelligence needs to stay sharp to keep the mind in check. So we want to make sure we get a proper amount of sleep. So if we go to bed early and we get the number of hours of sleep that we need, then when we wake up in the morning, we go to the morning program, or if you're not in an ashram and you only have time to chant your japa before you go to work, let's say. Either way, getting enough sleep means that when you chant your japa, you can chant it with more attention, or at least attempt to chant it with more attention. Then distraction. Put the phone away. Don't walk around looking at things. Don't take a japa walk in new places with new exciting things to look at. And, because sometimes we may think that, I'm in nature, I'm in a forest, it's Krishna's energy, it's beautiful, I'm checking out the scene. It's still a distraction. It's not what we're doing right now. What we're doing right now is we're connecting directly with Krishna through japa, not through the appreciation of the beautiful things that he has created. That's a separate activity. So lack of intensity or lack of interest, we really should have this sense of urgency. We're going to go over these obstacles to attentiveness a little later too. We'll go over it a little more in depth. But just caring that caring about japa, caring about our relationship with Krishna. So those are the things. Get a good night's sleep, don't be distracted, and try to understand the importance of chanting and the importance of reconnecting with Krishna in that perfect relationship that we have with him. Okay, so holy name remains hidden at this stage. So just skip this stage. You don't have to be on this stage at all. You can go straight to Namabhasa, which Prabhupada calls almost pure chanting, or the clearing stage. Nama abhasa means like a reflection. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. So humility is required to recognize Durdaiva, right? First we need that humility that we have this misfortune due to our offenses. And then knowing that we should strive diligently with a sense of urgency to become free from offenses. The offenses are going to be there until we become purified, but we should at least try to avoid them. So that means trying to chant attentively, right? It doesn't. We're not at the pure stage yet. So our default mode when we chant is that the mind will wander. So we have to expect that the mind will wander. We have to expect it. But what's important in this stage is to say, I see it wandering, and I'm going to bring it back every time I see that happening. That effort is the clearing stage. That effort is called almost pure chanting. So when you're chanting and you see your mind wandering, just bring it back and just hear the mantra. That's the clearing stage. You can start right then and there in that stage. So we can go straight to this stage and begin our anartha nivritti so that we can get to that fixed up stage of nishtha. So the level of revelation in this stage, Haridas Thakur explains that it's like when the sun is below the horizon, And then you have the dawning twilight, right? So you have the early morning hours, the sun starts to come up. And he says that's like the dawning twilight is comes into the sky and it destroys all sinful reactions. So, right, the holy name destroys sinful reactions. So why he likens it to this dawning twilight is because he gives the example or the analogy that it's like being in the forest at night. So when it's dark in the forest and you're in the forest, it's very fearful. You can't see where you're going. There's all sorts of unsavory characters out at night, right? Thieves come out at night and certain animals come out at night. And you typically don't want to be in the forest alone at night, at least unequipped. So it's a very fearful situation and it's hard to see anything. And so Haridas Thakur explains that Namabhasa is like when the sun starts to rise on the horizon, when it starts to come up, that twilight hour of the dawn. You start to see, this is where Abhasa comes in, it's like a reflection. So you see the light, you see the reflection of light from the sun, but you don't see the full manifestation of the sun yet, right? It's not up fully in the sky, you don't see the full manifestation. That's Namabhasa. You see a reflection of Krishna. So when you go to this stage and you attempt to chant your rounds attentively, just the attempt, it doesn't have to always be attentive, you just have to attempt. Because your mind is going to wander. It's kind of like if you have a dog on one of those retractable leashes, dog is sitting next to you nice and peacefully, that's your mind. Dog sees something that distracts it, goes running off after whatever animal, bike, skateboard, whatever it is. And you retract the leash, you just bring the dog back. Just sit down. This is not what we're doing right now. You're not chasing things right now. So that's what we do with our minds. We know that the mind is turbulent, right? Arjuna says that in the Gita. The mind is restless, it's turbulent, it's obstinate. It's going to keep trying and trying and trying to get away. Because right now the mind is conditioned towards being attracted to things other than Krishna, things that it thinks are disconnected from Krishna, right? Because everything's connected. But the mind is saying, there's this thing you might want to look at while you're chanting your japa. And don't forget to look up on this website for this thing, or check this email, or check that text. And let's really think hard about what so-and-so said to you the other day and what the options are you could have said better back to them. What were some good comebacks? What were some intelligent things you could have said? That's what the mind does to you. So entering into our japa, we have to know that the mind is going to do that. That's not the problem. That's not the problem. The problem is if we don't care. So if the mind is going through this whole list of things to think about other than Krishna, and we're like, what to do? Oh well, then that's namaparad. If the mind starts going through all these things, even if 10 minutes later you're thinking, oh my God, wait, how did I get here? I was just thinking about my rounds and now I'm on like 10 subjects later. My mind has dragged me away. You recognize it and you say, no, that's not what we're doing right now. We're chanting. We're paying attention to Krishna because Krishna deserves to be paid attention to. Krishna is doing everything to bring us back to him after we left him. He's doing everything he can. He deserves to be paid attention to. We've already turned away from him. Now we're turning back. Let's show a little respect. We're inviting Krishna. We're inviting him to come have a conversation. We're inviting him, as Prabhupada says, and asking, how can I be engaged in your service? Right? It's like a returning to someone that you abandoned. And so you can imagine if someone comes to talk to you and they say, hey, let's hang out tomorrow. I want to talk to you about something. And or other way around, you tell them, I have something on my mind I want to talk to you about. Okay, so they invite you over. And then while you are revealing your mind, they're texting people, they're looking at their phone, they're laughing, they're like, everything, you know how you could tell when someone's on the phone because everything you say to them takes them 5 seconds to respond to. So you may say, yeah, yesterday I had a really bad day. uh-huh. You know, so the friend, like, there's like, you know. And so when that happens, how do you feel? When you're revealing your mind to someone or trying to talk to them, and there's so many delays when they respond to you, and there's just kind of a nodding of the head or looking at their phone, how do you feel? And think about that when you chant your rounds. How does Krishna feel when you say, hey, Krishna, come here, I want to talk to you? And then you ignore him, right? You invite him in, and then you just go in the other room and you ignore him. So the way I feel when someone's doing that is, I don't want to talk anymore. I'm not interested. You're not interested. I'm not interested. That's why Krishna remains hidden on the Nam Aparad stage, the stage of offensive chanting. He remains hidden because you're not interested. So why is he going to come sit and reveal himself to you when you're not even looking, when you're not even paying attention? And so we want to keep that in mind. And we want to think, I like to pray to Krishna, to the deities before I chant, and say to please help me control my mind so that I can give you the attention that you deserve. So when we do that, when we have that mentality, when we're trying to bring the mind back whenever it wanders, Krishna really appreciates that. And he starts to reveal himself in little ways. And you'll see that. Just try it. You're going to see that that's what happens. He's going to reveal himself in different ways. And the beauty of it is, the thing is, it doesn't matter what. The chanting still takes you a certain amount of time whether you pay attention or not. So let's say it takes you 2 hours to chant your rounds. You might as well try to pay attention because you're chanting for 2 hours anyways. You know, why not try to be attentive during those 2 hours? It's not going to slow you down. In fact, it might even speed it up because you get such a taste that you're just kind of, you can't get enough. You're just chanting and chanting and chanting. And you may even want more after that. Rather than looking at your watch, am I almost done? How many rounds do I have left? Okay, so that's just a few words about chanting. And this can really change your whole world. It can change your whole experience and your service to Krishna, your service to the Vaishnavas. It's going to change your whole world. You just have to hear the mantra. That's it. Every time your mind wanders, bring it back. Expect it to wander, but care about it. Care about the fact that it's wandering. Whenever you can catch it and bring it back, and just hear each mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Just hear each syllable, and guaranteed Krishna will begin to reveal himself, and you will get a taste for chanting. So this is how you fix that that lack of taste, that lack of interest, seeing chanting sometimes as a chore, as a duty. So this stage gives liberation, but devotees don't care about liberation, right? What we care about is Prema. What we care about is reconnecting to Krishna. But it just so happens this stage gives liberation. This is what Haridas Thakur explains. Okay, so then the pure stage, Shuddha Nam, pure chanting, one becomes spontaneously attracted to Krishna, and one attains ecstasy and spontaneous devotional service. So the level of revelation is that Krishna is completely revealed. This is direct darshan. And this stage gives prema. So in this stage, the default mode of your mind is that it wanders to Krishna, right? In Namabhasa, it wandered away from Krishna. In Shuddhanam, it wanders towards Krishna and away from material things. So someone at this stage may have to do something in this world, and while they're trying to do it, their mind keeps wandering to Krishna. Of course, we're supposed to do everything in Krishna consciousness, but we sometimes have to focus, for example, at work. We do have to focus on our work. So just like when we chant in the Namabhasa stage, we find our mind wandering off to work. If you're in Shuddhanam and you're at work, you find while you're at work, your mind is wandering off to Krishna. So that's the stage that we eventually get to. In this stage, it's a different kind of wandering, and this is pure chanting. Don't worry, on the Namabhasa stage, just expect your mind to wander away from Krishna. That's not the failure. Sometimes people feel like they failed because they had to keep bringing their mind back. Bringing your mind back is the success. Noticing that your mind is wandering and bringing it back is your success. Okay, so clearing of anarthas while practicing Krishna consciousness in the association of devotees, right? That's part of this this krama from Sraddha to Prema, anartha-nivritti, clearing of anarthas. So due to a mood of repentance, humility begins to develop, pride goes away, and one starts to become free from various obstacles or anarthas. When I say a mood of repentance, what I'm saying is that we have turned away from Krishna. We have come to this world to be enjoyers, as Prabhupada explains. And we have decided to turn back to Krishna. Like, we made a mistake. It didn't work out the way we thought it would, of course, because it's not our true constitutional position. It's not our true nature. And so we're going to turn back towards Krishna. So if you can imagine that you're in a relationship with somebody, any kind of relationship, whether it's a friendship, a partnership with a wife, a husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, and let's say you just abandon that person and they've done nothing wrong, but you abandon them because you think there might be something better out there for you. And then you realize that, oh, that person actually didn't do anything wrong and that was a great relationship. Do you then go back to their house, knock on their door, they open it up and you say, okay, so anyways, back to where we were. Let's go hang out today. That's not how you approach a person you've abandoned, right? Because they're going to tell you to take a hike if you do that. First of all, you have to apologize and hope that they accept you back. You're going to knock on the door. They're going to open it up. Here I am. I'm really, really sorry that I left you. I realize how important this relationship is. I realize you've done nothing wrong. I made a mistake. Will you take me back? Right? So this is how we approach Krishna, how we approach our japa. Will you take me back? So that's humility. Humility is, I've realized the mistake I made. I realize how insignificant I am. I realize I'm not the center of the universe. As hard as I tried to be the center, I am not. So that's why humility begins to develop. Pride goes away. What's there to be proud of? That's how we begin this anartha-nivritti, by trying to give Krishna the attention he deserves while apologetically approaching him. Okay, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, those who chant the holy name with full faith in the association of devotees are free from anarthas and reach the stage of nishtha. So let's talk about that, nishtha, being fixed up in Krishna consciousness. So this is verse 3, and in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Anchalila, it's chapter 20, text 21. One who thinks himself lower than the grass, who is more tolerant than a tree, and who does not expect personal honor, but is always prepared to give all respect to others, can very easily always chant the holy name of the Lord. So this is the humble state of mind, right? This is also required. So in the Bhagavad Gita, it gives a list of items declared to be knowledge and anything else is ignorance, right? So let's look at these. Humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, and absence of false ego. These are just some of the items. But I listed these items because it kind of goes back to that humble state of mind, right? Humility, pridelessness, tolerance. You don't expect respect. You don't expect everyone to treat you well. And that doesn't mean that we tolerate abuse, though we may have, a very advanced person may think that they deserve the abuse that they're getting. So we have to look out for each other. Those people who are very advanced, they have to be protected because the person who is abusing them is committing offenses, and the person who's The person who just watches it and lets it go, that's also an offense. We have to protect. We have to protect those who are tolerating these sorts of things. But the point being here that this is the attitude that gets developed. And so that leads to that pure chanting. So Ravinda Sri Prabhu said that natural humility will begin to develop if we pay attention to Krishna when we chant, or at least try to pay attention, and try to give up offenses. Pride is a sign of having forgotten Krishna, right? Because again, what's there to be proud of? Because we think we're the center. If we get into contact with Krishna through the holy name, one begins to feel remorse for having forgotten Krishna, and natural humility develops. So this goes back to what I was saying, when you realize that you've left somebody who only wishes you the best and has contributed towards a healthy relationship with you, you feel that repentance, you feel that humility, that I've made a mistake. Okay, so Lord Chaitanya, these are the verses in between the verses. So this is Lord Chaitanya elaborating on this humility in verses 22 to 26. These are the symptoms of one who chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Although he is very exalted, he thinks himself lower than the grass on the ground, and like a tree, he tolerates everything in two ways. When a tree is cut down, it does not protest. Even when drying up, it does not ask anyone for water. And then the tree delivers its fruits, flowers, and whatever else it possesses to anyone and everyone. It tolerates scorching heat and torrents of rain, yet still gives shelter to others. So this is an example of extreme humility. This is an example of tolerance. These are moods that are developed. But again, if you saw a devotee standing outside in the scorching heat and torrents of rain, you're going to do something to help them out. You're going to bring them into a shelter. You're going to bring them in and warm them up or cool them down. You're going to give them water. And I do have to say that though we are talking about humility and it's being exemplified in these verses, please don't let yourself dry up when you need water. Just drink water, because Krishna has given us these bodies and we need to use them in his service. So just keep it hydrated. Keep it hydrated, keep some food in there, some prasadam, and keep moving forward, because we have a job to do. We have to reconnect with Krishna, and we have to bring Krishna to others who have forgotten him and need to revive their Krishna consciousness. And in order to do that, we have to be alive and awake. Get enough sleep, drink enough water, eat the right amount of prasadam, that it keeps the body going in a healthy way. But anyways, back to the verses. This is exemplifying a very exalted state of humility. Although a Vaishnava is the most exalted person, he is prideless and gives all respect to everyone, knowing everyone to be the resting place of Krishna. So Krishna is in the heart of every living being. If one chants the holy name of Lord Krishna in this manner, he will certainly awaken his dormant love for Krishna's lotus feet. And then Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami comments on Lord Chaitanya's behavior. This is very interesting. This is text 27 to 28. As Lord Chaitanya spoke in this way, his humility increased, and he began praying to Krishna that he could discharge pure devotional service. Wherever there is a relationship of love of Godhead, its natural symptom is that the devotee does not think himself a devotee. Instead, he always thinks that he is not even a drop of love for Krishna. And you might want to read the purport to this verse. Srila Prabhupada elaborates in the purport, and it's very nice explanation and commentary. So go ahead and give that a read. It's very enlightening. So we know, like the description of the Uttama Adhikari, they think that and this is the highest stage of devotional service, and Uttama Adhikari thinks that everyone else is a devotee except for me. Everyone. I'm the only one who's not. And so that's a natural symptom of humility. If we're going in the opposite direction, we're doing something wrong. If we're getting more and more proud, we're doing something wrong. Okay, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, even if one can give up all material desires, the desire for fame is very difficult to give up. This desire for fame, which is compared to stool, is the root cause of all anarthas. Therefore, one should carefully avoid touching this stool in the form of desire for fame. So we're not out to be popular. We're not out to have our name in bright lights. We're not out to be a famous leader. We're just here to teach others. We're here to try to turn back to Krishna, reconnect with him, and guide others into reconnecting with Krishna. That's our job. We're servants. We are serving Krishna. We are serving Lord Chaitanya's mission. And those activities are what are most dear to Krishna, according to what he says in the Bhagavad Gita in the 18th chapter. Okay, so 4, our final points, how to become fixed in devotion to Krishna. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Nishta means to be endowed with the quality of steadiness, Naishchalyam. So there's 5 obstacles to steadiness, and 3 of them we kind of already went over a little bit, but we're going to go over again. It bears repeating, and it's very helpful. As you see in Prabhupada's books, he repeats things over and over and over and over and over again. And for some people, they may wonder, why is he so repetitive? Because we have to hear things over and over again in order for them to stick. And then there can be no question about what we're supposed to do, because it's not, well, Prabhupada just said this one time, so I'm not sure, but when he says it over and over again, you really know we got to pay attention. So it's good to go over things more than once. So the 5 obstacles to steadiness. 1 is sleep. We talked about that, laya. 2 is distraction, vikshepa. We talked about that. 3 is indifference or disinterest in spiritual topics, apratipati. We talked about that a little bit. 4 is a tendency toward bad habits, kashaya. And 5 is a taste for material enjoyment, or rasa vada. So let's go over these. So 1, sleep. Again, we talked about this before, but this starts the night before. Just get enough sleep. And some different ways to get good quality sleep. 1, don't eat too close to bed. Don't go to bed on a full stomach. Try to get your food mostly digested, if not completely digested, before bed. The earlier you get to bed, the better the quality of sleep. So they say that after 10 o'clock, it's kind of, the hours count as halftime. So if you go to bed at 9, you need less sleep than if you go to bed at 11. And I've tried this. It actually is true. So going to bed early. One thing is, if you can get to bed by 8:30, 9 o'clock, your temptation to do distracting activities is very much decreased at that time. I've noticed that 9 o'clock is the tipping point. If I can get to bed, once it goes past 9 o'clock, my mind starts to tell me all these amazing material activities I can engage in before bed. And then you know how it goes sometimes. One thing leads to another. You start watching something on YouTube, and then it's really late, and you figure, well, I already messed up, might as well keep going, and then you're up really late. So it's kind of like the snowball effect. Once you go over, it's like the 9 o'clock is at the top of the hill, and once the snowball starts to roll down towards 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, midnight, it just gets worse and worse. So getting settled down, getting into bed around 8:30, reading a book, not looking at your phone or any electronic devices anymore, because that's another whole thing. But they say to put down electronic devices at least an hour before bed, because the light from the phone and the stimulation from watching things decreases your melatonin production. Melatonin is what helps you fall asleep and stay asleep. And once you're asleep, if you stay asleep and it's good quality sleep, your body can heal better, which makes you stronger in the morning, which makes you better able to do your duties and chant your rounds. So it starts the night before. Get a good night's sleep. Then distraction. Put away the phone. Stay away from... Don't hang out with your friends and chant while they're all talking. You know, sitting off to the side and you just want to be around people and they're all talking. Don't walk in new places. Again, we talked about that. Like, you can go out into nature. You can be amazed at how good of an artist Krishna is, but that's not what we're doing during Japa. During Japa, we're just paying attention to the holy name. So you can imagine, like, if you go over someone's house, for example, and you tell them, yeah, I want to have a conversation with you about something. So you sit down to talk, and the other person starts talking to you, and while they're talking, even while you're talking, you're looking around. Wow. And, you know, you just start, yeah, you know, I really like what you've done with the place. And the person's sitting there trying to tell you, you know, what difficulties they're going through, or is trying to tell you maybe how much they missed you, whatever the case may be. It's not the time. If you first walk into someone's house and you haven't sat down for a conversation yet, and you tell them, I like what you've done with the place, and you go into it, that's, you know, that's the appropriate time for that conversation. But once you start having a separate conversation, a conversation about your feelings, a conversation about your relationship, it's not the time. So if you are inviting Krishna into a conversation and you start chanting and you're walking around the woods and you're going, yeah, Krishna, I like what you've done with the place. It's not the time. So sometimes we think that, well, I appreciate nature, right? It's connected with Krishna. That's great, but there's a separate time for that. So if you're going out and you're not chanting and you're looking around and appreciating it, that's fine. But japa is the only activity at that point. That's all you're doing. So we don't want to have any of those distractions. We want to just be hearing the holy name. So whether that means, even if you need to move while you chant, moving in a space that is so old to you that there's nothing of interest anymore. You've seen it all a million times. Not to walk in new places, or to just sit and chant somewhere where you can just pay attention and not be distracted. Okay, indifference. If we make that effort to hear and chant more, to hear more, to read more, we do get an interest in these topics. It's very enlightening. Prabhupada says that with successive reading of the Bhagavatam, it becomes more luminous. And so when you couple that with chanting, let's say you are making every attempt to be attentive while you chant, to bring your mind back whenever it wanders, and then you're also reading with attention, you're going to be able to enter those pages of Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita even more deeply, and you're going to get more of a taste for that too. And they're going to work together. The hearing and the chanting, they're going to work together to increase your interest. 4, tendency towards bad habits. Careful with the company you keep. Try to stay in the mode of goodness. You know, sometimes during the day we enter into the mode of passion, but at least in the morning and the evening, really try to stay in the mode of goodness. Get to bed early. Eat healthy. Don't overeat. Don't stay on your electronic devices for hours on end. Go to bed peacefully. Read a book before you go to sleep, like an actual book that you hold in your hand, not on an electronic device. Just try to stay in the mode of goodness. There's so many ways. That's another whole class we could go into, actually. There's so much nectar in Prabhupada's books. There's so much to talk about. We can have a different class for each topic. And then 5, taste for material enjoyment. The more we hear and chant properly, the more our desire for material enjoyment decreases. So don't do things that increase your material desires, like, for example, going to bed really late, hanging out with people who like to enjoy material activities, and so on. So those are the 5 obstacles to our steadiness. And this, again, this nishtha, this is on the other side of anartha-nivritti. If we follow these steps in trying to be attentive in our chanting, trying to avoid offenses, then there will be anartha-nivritti. Not maybe, but will be anartha-nivritti. And then we'll get to that stage of being fixed. Okay, so let's summarize what we went over. So this is verses 1, 2, and 3. Verse 1 is Sraddha. It introduces the glories of chanting Krishna's holy names. It expresses the victory of Sankirtana, and it describes the 7 benedictions that come from chanting. So that's that Sraddha. It's like telling you, here's what comes from this. Here's the glories of this activity. And then it gives us faith that this may be something we want to try. And then verse 2 is Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, and Anarthana Vritti. Krishna mercifully and liberally teaches his names, in which he has invested all his potencies. And then for us to be able to admit that, following Lord Chaitanya's example, I am so unfortunate that I have no taste due to committing offenses while chanting. So again, once we identify the problem, we can troubleshoot. I see Krishna consciousness as troubleshooting. Always. Everything that we do, rather than just coming down on ourselves really hard and talking about how unqualified we are and how we probably shouldn't be in the association of devotees and like we'll never get there. We want to troubleshoot. Of course we want that humility. Yes, I've made a mistake. Yes, I've offended a devotee. I should ask for their forgiveness. But continue moving forward. Don't get stuck there. Don't get stuck in pity. Have a healthy amount of humility, have a healthy amount of self-reflection, and move forward. I made a mistake. I commit offenses. What can I do? Go to your mentors. Go to someone you trust. How can I stop committing offenses? Do you have any tips? Do you have any, what are the ways in which I can do this? And then just even what we went over today, it's like of getting good sleep, avoiding distractions, and so on. So just always troubleshooting, always moving forward and troubleshooting. What can I do to fix the mistakes that I'm making? What can I do to fix the problems that I have? So if I don't have a taste, what can I do to fix it? So avoiding those offenses and so on. And then verse 3, Nishta, a humble state of mind and avoiding the 5 obstacles allows one to very easily and steadily, Nishta, always chant the holy name of the Lord. So keeping these things in mind, these different verses, these instructions from Lord Chaitanya, go and chant your rounds and try to apply these techniques, try to apply these instructions and see what your japa is like. And I'd always be happy to hear from anybody who, I always pray that everyone can benefit from this information that's being given, that I can present it in such a way that people can benefit from it. Of course, the instructions of Lord Chaitanya, of Krishna, of Prabhupada, they're always beneficial. But I always pray that I can present it in such a way that people can understand it and can apply it to their practice of Krishna consciousness. So if you want to share your experiences with applying these processes, if you have questions, if you want to have a discussion, please feel free to email me. My email address is in the description. And I look forward to hearing from you and hope to have you on board again for the next classes that we're going to be doing on the Siksastaka and any other classes that you think might be beneficial. Thank you all so much for joining me, and have a good rest of the day, and Hare Krishna. Happy chanting.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,